Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday General Bible Study, a Bible study for everybody. Before we get into our lesson this week, let us start off with some prayer. Lord God, I thank you once again for another day. I thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. God, I ask that on tonight that you just continue to open up our hearts and our minds to your word. Let us be receptive to whatever the Spirit is leading us to take in. Allow us to truly hear from you, God. And Lord, I pray that you will use me as you would see fit. In Jesus' name I pray, thank God, and amen. Okay, so we are now on day 6 devotional. This is from the book Priority Time, Addicted to God's Word by Chris Conley. We're in the last section, so part 4 was the Devo section. And this time we will now be finishing up Philippians chapter 1. So this is verses 27 through the end, verse 30. And of course, as always, there's 2 halves to these devotionals, so we'll get through as much as we can for this time. And then, if we can't get to the second part, then we'll just continue on next week. Okay. So this particular lesson is titled "A Life That Is Working." A life that is working. Right. Last time we did. For me, life is ... Right. Fill in the blank. Okay. So now we're looking at a life that is working. Okay. So before we really get into this lesson, let's go ahead and read our verses. So as always, I'm going to read both King James and English Standard Version. And again, this is Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 through 30. Okay. So King James first. Only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ, that whether I come and see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that of God. For unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ, not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his sake, having the same conflict which ye saw in me, and now hear to be in me. Again, that's Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 through 30, King James. Now for the English Standard Version. Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel, and not frightened in anything by your opponents. This is a clear sign to them of their destruction, but of your salvation, and that from God. For it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake, engaged in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 through 30, English Standard Version. So, first, let's look at that. Okay? The first thing, right, verse 27, now this is King James, right? Let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ. First thing. When it's like whether, right, because the next part, I got to finish it. The next part is that whether I come and see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. So whether you are out and about or within your home or wherever you're at, right, everywhere you go, you represent Christ. And so he's telling them, whether I'm there or not, don't let me get word that y'all got a whole bunch of mess going on in this church. Right? I want to hear news that y'all are standing firm together in the faith, in unity, strong. And, honestly, today, yeah, it's a lot of churches that have that issue. It's like there's too much mess. There's too much mess. There's too much drama. Like, it shouldn't be that way. So your conversation, right, or in the ESV, your manner of life should reflect the gospel. Like, people should see that in your life, in your walk, in your talk, in the way you treat people, in the way you behave, the conversations that you have. It should be evident of the God in you. But if you are acting like a godless people, guess what's going to happen? It's like if you act like he's not in you, right? Or in some cases, if your heart has become so hardened by sin, right, by godlessness, then it's kind of like, oh, you Christian? Or you become the messy Christian. Like, no, that's not a good representation of Christ, right? That's the first thing. Then looking at this next one, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition, but to you a salvation and that of God. Reading this, I thought about Psalm 118, verse 16. Right, the Lord is on my side. Hold on, let me not misquote. let me not misquote scripture. But essentially, it's like, I shall not fear of what can man do to me? Let me read that. Oop, 118 verse 6. Here we go. This is King James. The Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do unto me? And Paul let him know, don't be afraid of people. Right? Like, because remember, in this time, they're being heavily persecuted. And make no mistake, Christians are being persecuted today. It's just that in this country, we're not dealing with the level of persecution that a lot of people in other countries deal with. Okay, but these people, it's like my life is on the line. Like persecution. He's like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of them. Right? So looking at the next part, right? For unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his sake. There's a lot of people that don't want to suffer, though. But I believe, the ladies, we talked about that, right? Matthew chapter 5, verse 10 tells me I'm blessed when they persecute me. Right? Let's read that. And again, this is King James. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is a suffering way. To really grow in God means that you're never really going to be comfortable. You're constantly being pushed outside of your spiritual comfort zone, like on a regular basis. I can testify to that. Because now, for a couple of days there, it's like God was waking me up, pray for this person, and praying scripture over them. Next time it's somebody else. So then I just popped up like, okay, God, who I need to pray for? Woke up early, like, God, who I need to pray for? Who I need to pray for now? Like, would I rather be sleeping at 2, 3 in the morning? I most certainly would. But he woke me up for a reason. I think I better get up. You're never going to be comfortable. If you find yourself in a space where you start getting comfortable, that's a sign of stagnation. You're spiritually dying. You are slowly spiritually dying because that's what the enemy does. He kind of lulls you to sleep. And then you get to a place where you're not really doing anything, right? He either keeps you super busy to where your mind is completely focused on everything else but what you actually need to be doing for the Lord, right? Or even within ministry, he can keep you so busy within that you forget to spend time with him, right? Like, this is literally what we're doing right now. Like, this is, Bible study is good. Like, please go to Bible study, go to church, but remember that your Bible study is not your quiet time. That's what, our lessons have been about on quiet time. But it's not your quiet time. Your quiet time is you and the Lord, right? Or priority time. Because now, there are days where I used to kind of like, well, man, I got to wait till I get home. And then I'm like, no, I don't. So I'll be somewhere. And when I get a moment, I hit a go. And I get my audio Bible going. And so I'm listening to God's word. And I'm reflecting on what I'm listening to. I'll pause it and be like, man, I read this before, but I never, I'm taking that time to spend time with them, right? But when I don't do that, and I'm running around ragged, I become an easy target for Satan, right? Or the opposite. You get so comfortable and so cushy. Any type of adversity comes along, ooh, nope, this can't be of God. What do you mean? Jesus was led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness. Tempted by the devil. So Jesus had, to face that fight. What do you think that means for you, child of the King? So yeah, like this is not a vacay. Your vacay don't come till you hear that well done. That's when you're gonna be on vacay, right? Because then all suffering, right? Death shall have no sting. We all gonna have the victory. Well, can't say we all gonna have the victory, but at that time is like, okay, now I can rest. But until then, I gotta fight the good fight. I have to endure as a good soldier in the Lord's army and keep fighting. I have to press toward the mark. That means I'm not going to be comfortable. He suffered for me. He gave his life. So this little bit of discomfort, I think I shared that with y'all, one lesson, right? This little bit of discomfort that I'm dealing with is nothing. Especially when I'm not doing it in my own strength and I'm trusting in the power of God and his word to get me through it. It's nothing. Okay? So just consider that, right? And then the last verse, having the same conflict which ye saw in me and now here to be in me. In other words, I'm going through it too. You ain't going through this by yourself. I'm getting into my list. I'm about to jump into the list. But that reminder, like, it's easy to get to a place where you feel like you're the only one, but you're not. You're not fighting alone. And so he wants them to remember that too. Like, yeah, I'm also being persecuted. He locked up while writing this. And yet, encouraging them to have faith. Don't you think Paul could have been like, he was in this jail for 2 years, so he easily could have been like, I wish they would write me more. I'm just, oh man, it's brutal out here. They just, God, I've done so much for you, Lord. That wasn't his attitude, though. The ESV, right, going back to 28, the ESV says to their evident token of their destruction, right, perdition, the King James. But yeah, you think that you're winning, right? And sometimes it may feel like, evil is winning. And it's like, God, I don't understand this. Been through that season. Oh my God, but I feel like they won, right? I'm thinking about the people who, they talked about me and you ain't gonna be nothing. And at that time, it was like a really rough season because I'm looking at my life and I'm like, God, where is the win for me? And you're like, them people didn't win because you're still here. It didn't change the things that I've spoken over you. Because nobody's word goes against my word. So it's like, yeah, sometimes it feels that way, but it's like, remember, you're not fighting this alone. I still have the victory in Christ. And I have to live like it. I have to walk like that. Okay? So, getting into our focused thinking portion. Okay, first question is, what does it look like for your manner of life to be worthy of the gospel of Christ? And he references us back to verses 27 and 28. Okay, so let's read it again. And again, this is King James. Only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ, that whether I come and see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that ye stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition, but to you of salvation and that of God. And that's Philippians chapter 1, verses 27 and 28. Okay. So my little side note, excuse me, I feel like I'm losing my voice, so bear with me. Okay, but my side note, when people can see me, whether people can see me or not, I must stand fast in one spirit with my brothers and sisters in Christ, striving together for the faith of the gospel. I will not fear my adversaries, and that in turn is evident of their perdition, right? That's your destruction, because God don't play. Of my salvation, and that is of God. All things work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Right? Romans 8:28. Remember that you've been called according to his purpose, and every single thing that he allows to come your way in your life is building you up for that purpose. Now, there are some things that, it's like, okay, God, I don't understand this one. And there's some stuff where I own up to him, like, you know what, that wasn't the God thing, that was me causing a delay or causing a heartache or having to suffer consequences because of disobedience. But in that, it's like, okay, when I'm going through that God-ordained adversity, right, those things that He has purposed in my life, it's always going to work out for my good. Okay. So second question for this, what does this passage say about suffering? And again, we're referred back to verse 30. Okay, having the same conflict which ye saw in me and now here to be in me. Actually, I would say verse 39 or 29, right? For unto you is given in behalf of Christ not only to believe on Him, but also to suffer for His sake. And then verse 30, having the same conflict which ye saw in me and now here to be in me. Okay, so we talked about that. But my side note, okay, we don't suffer alone. We may not be dealing with the same kind of attacks, but we are all going through together. It's easy to get lost in self and think, why me? We completely forget that this is a suffering way and Christ didn't die for us to be comfortable, but that so through His blood we could be saved and fight the good fight. Suffering isn't an abnormality, it's the norm. We kind of talked about that in a previous lesson, I believe. Okay? We are in a fallen world, a fallen, sin-sick world. Suffering is the norm. Now, I'm not saying like, and I have kind of heard messages like that where it's like, you're supposed to be, it's kind of this notion of like being miserable every day and just, no. No. Suffering means I'm going to have to deal with something at some point, whether it's internally or externally. I'm going to be facing some type of challenge, obstacle, or whatever. There's something that I'm going to have to fight. But even though I'm suffering through these things, even though I might be persecuted, people lying on me, whatever, being attacked, spiritually attacked, I have joy, right? Because like, okay, I know whose hands I'm in. I have peace when I know who God is. It's because I have Him in my life that I'm able to get through the suffering. I'm able to get through those really hard seasons in my life because of Christ. So rather than me sitting there complaining, I'm just so sick of these people, I'm sick of this job, I'm sick of blah, 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 and, I'm tired of this situation, just start giving them praise. Did you ever think about that? To just start thanking God in the midst of your situation rather than complaining all the time? We talked about that too, or at least for the ladies we did, sharing that, where it's like I complained a lot and I always had, and it was just like speaking death over myself. But the minute I started learning how to tell God, thank you, and started learning to be grateful, to be thankful, like He kept telling me He wanted me to be, like, I just want you to be grateful. And I started doing that, and suddenly I started realizing I had a whole lot more to be thankful for than I thought. When I start thinking back on how He's brought me through up to this point, I get emotional, and I start thinking about those scriptures that He was speaking over me, but it was like I didn't quite understand it yet. I wasn't grasping it. It's just like, okay, I hear you, God. I understand. I know. No, you don't. So I'm just say it to you again. I just keep saying this to you. So it starts to sink in. And now I'm looking back like, oh, wow. So as I see myself going through yet another season, again, it's like before I start to complain, or if I feel myself going back to that place where I used to be, I'm like, no, I'm not going back there, because he's got me. And I'm not alone. Right now, he's positioned me to where I can, like, be more vulnerable with other ladies who are also being discipled with me. We're all being discipled together. And it's like I've learned to kind of, start opening up to them. And they're like, oh, well, now we know what to pray for. We pray for one another, and it's just like, yeah, we in the trenches together. It's a really nice thing. It's a beautiful thing. Again, don't see suffering as, like I said earlier, right? As something like, oh, I'm just going to never have joy. What? No, I have joy because he's with me in the suffering. When I feel like nobody understands, even when I try to tell them as best as I can, it feels like nobody's listening to me. God hears my prayers. And if nobody else understands, my high priest does. That's what Hebrews tells me. He's a high priest. He has gone through it all. Jesus went through it all. So he knows exactly how I feel. Right? Tempted with every temptation that we've been tempted with, but did not sin. So he knows exactly how you feel. And that's something to give thanks for. Right? So, personal application. Okay, remember we got our 2 questions. Right? So the first is, how do you walk in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ? Be specific. Okay. So, at the time when I did this lesson, I wrote, currently working on my thought life and allowing myself to feel my emotions rather than turning to food or sexual fantasies. It is extremely easy, and it kind of goes back to part 1 of this book. It's extremely easy to define your, we'll say, savedness, right, to form your Christianity on what you don't do. And for the longest time, I feel like I was in that space. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm not sleeping around with anybody. Right? I don't do this. I don't do that. Right? Or what you do. Well, I go to church. I go to Bible study. There was a time I wouldn't even, what I need to go to Bible study for. And then I became, self-righteous with that. You're not going to Bible study? Bible study is important. You need to go to Bible study. I couldn't tell people why they need to go to Bible study, though. But they needed to go. It's a Christian thing to do. It's ridiculous, right? And we will look at those things. That's where that danger comes in, right? Because you'll justify it. Well, because God got on me about sexual fantasies for a long time. That's been a long struggle for me. And it was like, but I'm not sleeping with them. And he would immediately take me to Matthew chapter 7. That one particular verse, if you look at somebody with lust in your heart or in a lustful way, you've committed adultery in your heart. And he's like, why do you think it's considered adultery? Now, of course, God knows, but, he always got to throw them questions at me to make me think, make me pause and really think about, what I'm saying and doing. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, he's like, what is adultery? I'm like, well, I mean, somebody cheated on their spouse. He's like, exactly. I'm your first spouse before you even meet your earthly spouse, right, your natural spouse. Like, I am your spouse. So your thoughts belong to me. Your life belongs to me. I don't want you to just be a virgin. I want you to be pure, too, in your thoughts, in your life. The food thing, I would get, even now, like, oh my goodness, Oreos are like kryptonite for me. But when he's like, do you realize that you're an emotional eater? When you feel down, like that's what you reach for. You reach for junk food, and you don't just eat like a little bit, you gorge on it. I would go through an entire family pack of Oreos in less than 24 hours. I'm sitting there eating it for breakfast, eating it for lunch, eating it for dinner, and then the next day I'm sad because I ate all my Oreos, so now I don't have anything, to get me through the sadness. So I went out, and then I remember one time I went and bought a second pack, and I ate all that up. Horrible eating habits. And yet it was like God telling me, he's like, but you don't want to end up like some of your family members who are on medication for the rest of their life. Like, do you see your pattern? He's like, you don't need this. What you need is me. You need to spend more time with me. What you're craving is actually more intimacy with me. You don't need this junk. Okay? So I was like, okay, we got to work on my thought life. And I'm proud to say it's still work in progress. But, this year, this was this year, but I guess around like last month, just had a moment. Because, again, God has been telling me in that area, like, you don't have to submit to these things, right? You don't have to submit to these thoughts. You can speak against them. You can use my word and speak against them and cause Satan to flee. Like, do you realize these fantasies, like you're dealing with a spirit? So if you would just trust in the power of my word and just speak words over your life, like speak a word over yourself, when those thoughts come up, you can fight against them. And it's like, okay, I believe, but I didn't know it, right? So when he took me to Psalm 8:1, and I started studying. He had me study that verse. And so when those thoughts started coming up, that temptation started rising up, and I started speaking that verse over myself. Because it's like, oh, now I understand. Now I know. I believe, but now I know. So because I now know what this verse is saying, I know what it means, I'm able to speak it. I'm able to speak God's truth with confidence. Like, no. The second verse is like that realization, like, wait a minute. I'm over here giving into these thoughts or feeling like, man, I'm just so powerless, I'm helpless. But your God is not, though. Because his name is excellent in all the earth. In his glory, rest above the heavens. The God of the entire universe has got your back. So why are you sitting here cowering down to the enemy? And so I started speaking that verse over myself, and then a temptation just fled. Like the devil fled, right? I resisted him because I fought him with the word, like Jesus did in the wilderness. And when I fought him with the word, that temptation, whoop. And so then it was like, okay. I really don't have to, all this time, like, I don't know what was going on, but I really can't. You can change your thought life. You can. If you got a bad mouth, God can change that if you let him. So, yeah, that's where I was at. Okay? I tell you, recently, like, I want Oreos. No, you don't need Oreos. You don't need those. I still have those battles with those thoughts. But, again, because I now have that confidence, like, nope. So that's the place where we also have to get whatever it is for you. Because for me, I realize I got to start with my thoughts. Because whatever I think I believe that it goes into my heart. Your thoughts become action. From your heart, they turn into action. And if you continue to have that same thought pattern, you will start to believe whatever lies the enemy is telling you about yourself. about your God. That word's not going to save you. I don't even know why you keep praying that. I had a day like that last week. I'm sitting there, tailoring my prayers, right? So I have scriptures. Now I try to pray scripture into my prayers. That prayer ain't going to help you. That word ain't going to help you. And literally in that moment, it's like God will always answer his word. Holy Spirit just came right on in. God will always answer his word. Keep praying. So yeah, it's a battle. So for me, my thought life, and I can say it's improving gradually. It's improving. So think about what that is for you, right? How do you walk in a manner that's worthy, even if you are a work in progress? Because mind you, at this point, I was like, I'm a work in progress. Like, you know what? I'm not there yet, but I am vowing to work to commit to this. Because I know if I work in this area, then this will lead to this area being changed in my life. Be honest with these questions, okay? Personal application is you, okay? So the second question, I'm looking at my time, y'all. Second question, and then we'll go ahead. I don't think I had any for the life journaling. Oh, I do. I have a little bit for life journaling. And then we'll go ahead and close out, and we'll just get to the second half next week. Okay. The second question is, how have you or others you know suffered for the sake of Christ? Be specific. Okay, so I wrote, being isolated or feeling ignored and pushed aside, being talked about or feeling bullied and having to be still in that moment rather than retaliating. For others, being ostracized by the church for choosing not to uphold the status quo, i.e. more members, more money, being silent about racism and other hot-button issues, and instead choosing to teach the gospel. You would think that would make a whole lot of sense. It's like, how is teaching the gospel causing that person to be cast out by the church? But remember what Jesus and his disciples did and how heavily they were persecuted for telling the truth. One of, I think it was Paul's disciples, Stephen, was stoned to death for telling the truth. So yeah, it was happening back then. It's still happening today, right? And even that brings to mind like 1 John, was it verses verse 6, I believe. Really, I'm memorizing 4 through 8, but I believe it's verse 6 where it says in there, right, like, we know those who know God hear us, and those who are not of God will not hear us, right? They don't hear us because they're not of God. Therefore, this is how we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. You got people that are walking in error, but they think that because of their title or position or whatever, they're in truth. And that's dangerous as well, because we can also end up that way. Being isolated, feeling ignored, those are triggers for me. Like, oh, nobody cares about you. Being talked about, being bullied. I was bullied for a long time, so again, that's a trigger too. Because I think I mentioned that, right? There's that part of me that's like, no one will ever victimize me again. You will never make me feel this way again. Like, oh, I'm going to handle that. And it's, woo. The Spirit of God to come in and say, be still. Just sit there. Don't say nothing to them. Don't move. That was hard. To hear the whispers, but don't hear the whispers, and I'm sitting there getting upset. And the Lord's like, they talked about my son, too. I couldn't even say anything after that. I'm just like, ooh, you know what, they did talk about your son. I'm sorry, Lord. But he suffered it for me, so I can suffer this for you. Right? What are some things that you have suffered for the sake of Christ? If you feel like you have not suffered, remember what I said about being comfortable. Maybe you've been in your comfort zone for too long, and you need to start venturing out. But again, remember that when you are facing those times of suffering, he's with you. Right? He's already promised us, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. Yeah, you're going to get hurt. You might get some bruises, but it's not going to prosper. Hence, why Paul said, don't be afraid of these people. Right? I'm paraphrasing. And in nothing terrified by your adversaries. Because like I said, the ESV, that's their destruction. They're going to end up destroying themselves. But you, salvation, and that of God. Okay, so let's wrap this up. This last little part is the life journaling. This is just like extra thoughts that you might have from the lesson. As y'all know, there is the interactive prayer, but again, we never read that part. When you do your interactive prayer in your quiet time, that's private. That's you having a private moment with the Lord. Okay? So life journaling. And I wrote, suffering is an expectation, not an exception. I must not only be mindful of my response to it, remember what's your response like, but I must also remember I'm not the only one. This is why community is so important. We don't come together for pity parties or to stay in a place of misery, but rather to endure and fight together while supporting and being helpers one to another. Which is another thing. Are you a helper to your brothers and sisters in Christ? Are you a helper, or are you an instigator? Are you a gossiper? Right? Are you messy? Are you a complainer? Are you a doubter? Like you doubt someone, they come to you about, well, I don't know, are you sure? I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me. Like, and it's like, nobody ever talks to me. I wonder why. I wonder why. Are you a helper? Are you supportive? Remember, we want to be supportive, but we don't want to be enabling. We never want to be an enabler, right? But we do want to be, supportive. We're fighting together, not each other. Okay? So yeah, things to meditate on, to reflect on. You can do that for your quiet time too. After this, go read Philippians chapter 1, because we just finished it. And really meditate on what Paul is saying. Whatever translation works for you. I have a few that I read from. I just like the King James because I'm old school that way. Okay. But, I'll read the Amplified, I'll read the ESV, I'll read the Message Bible when I feel like I need that upfront, like bluntness in the word. Really take time to meditate on those things that he's saying and then apply it to your own life. All right. So that is it for this week, and then we'll come back to the second half of this Devo. Okay. So for now, we're going to pray out. Lord God, I thank you once again for another day. I thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. God, I thank you for this lesson and for the reminder, Lord, that suffering is not an exception, it's an expectation. But God, through the suffering, we can always expect you to be there with us. You promise to give us joy and abundance of it when we abide in you, God. You promise, Lord, that you would keep us, that you would never leave us nor forsake us, God. You are fighting our battles because the battle belongs to you. So we don't fight in our own strength because you are our strength. Lord, I'm thanking you and I'm praising you for being the one true God, Lord, for being an almighty God who is sovereign, who watches over us every day, who is faithful even when we are not. And in spite of everything that we are, everything that we aren't, God, you are. So we praise you just for that, Lord. I pray that a message was received, God, and that whatever seeds were planted, that you would just continue to increase in each of us, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray, thank God, and amen. Okay, I'm going to try to rest my voice. But y'all have an amazing weekend. Ladies, come back. Next Tuesday, we're continuing on with our lesson on Jesus. So please come back for that lesson. All right, y'all. Take care and God bless. Bye.